So, what's it like when you hear your tracks that you've worked in the studio on headphones for a long time? What's it like when you first hear them for the first time on a big system in Ibiza or in Germany or in London or wherever in San Francisco? What's it like? What's the first thing when you play that track for the first time on a big system? What is it that you're listening for? What is it that you hear? What is it that you think?
Very first thing I'm listening for is bass resonance, once again, because a lot of the setups that I work on, they don't really represent the super, super low end of the spectrum very well. And, it's very easy to have like a kick drum that just rumbles too hard or something, and it can like really just top of the whole thing over on a big system. So usually, there's a lot of times I finish a track and I'm halfway through a gig and I go to play it and I just can't bring myself to. Like, one thing is I make sure that the setting is right and the atmosphere is right, but generally, like, that first time I play a track, it scares the hell out of me, because like if I put it on and it comes in and I realize that it drastically needs to be changed, I then have to sort of sit through 8 minutes of this track that I'm playing at people that isn't finished. But it's also like, I think that first time playing it and having it go down well is like the best feeling in the world, because it's like, it's success. You've achieved that kind of result. So yeah, I just played one of my new sort of forthcoming album tracks last weekend in Belgium at Tomorrowland, which was just this like ridiculous festival with like 500 acts across 14 stages over 3 days. It was like the Woodstock of dance music or something. And yeah, so I played one of my new tracks out there to a crowd of, I don't know, maybe 4,000 people or something, and it was just, it was probably the track of the whole set for me, just because it was so new and, it was the first time people were hearing it. So yeah, it's very exciting.
You were here maybe 2 years ago.
Yep.
What have you learned in the past couple of years that you wish that you could tell yourself, either when you were starting out or from 2 years ago?
I think probably the sort of STEM analogy I was talking about before, and not having too much sort of floating in between those different areas is probably the biggest thing. I had a really strange interview once where I got quoted as saying, everything I write tends to be a little complex. It was like this kind of 2-page thing with a picture of me, and then this, like, the main sort of tagline for the whole thing in quotation marks was, everything I write tends to be a little complex. And I think that actually kind of summed up my music for a long time there, is I have a lot of stuff going on at the same time in a lot of my projects. And I have come to sort of embrace like simplicity a lot more. And, it's made me realize that I can have just as much kind of creativity and just as much complexity in my music without it being just overwhelming. So that would be the main thing, I think, is having something just stronger and more simple at the basis of it all to hold on to, like for your ears to listen to.
Okay. So you're using a lot of these ping pong delays on a lot of tracks in the test project we have here. How do you keep them from stepping on each other if you have like a million of these things going on at once?
Well, generally they're okay as long as they're sitting up in the higher frequencies, or if the sound itself is not particularly too high frequency. Like, when things start to get washed out is like sort of like 500 hertz and below. So on a lot of these kind of sounds, I'm hoping what I've actually put down on paper will back me up here a little bit. Yeah, so that's sort of based around like sort of 2 kilohertz, that kind of thing. And also this, say for example, this entire bus has those lower frequencies taken out of it as well. So this, for the overall final mix down, I would probably take that FX bus and I would get rid of that kind of 300 hertz. You'd be amazed how much muddiness you can get rid of just by getting rid of those lower frequencies. So yeah, I mean, as long as it's not competing in the sound space with something else, things can kind of wash out like that as much as they want. So yeah, and once again, I think it comes down to having parts that are working in unison with each other anyway. Yeah, like I was saying about not having parts sitting between those different stems, I think it's all right for the wetness of effects to be sitting, to fill out the sound space, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
So you had mentioned whenever you play a track out for the first time, you're listening for bass, rumble, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the sample track you have here, so you have a kick drum. Is it just a kick sample and a multiband compressor you're using, or how? What's your typical process for a kick drum and processing it?
Well, it depends on the kick. Actually, the multiband dynamics thing for me was actually more of a. It's kind of like localized to this particular kick, because I just really felt like in its natural state it was. Sorry, I'll turn that metronome off. It just felt like it needed a little bit more kind of, just sort of pushing the bottom end. I haven't actually compressed anything here as such with this multi-brand, but like what my original plan for it was to just kind of was actually to take the snap out of the top end of it. Because if you look at a spectrum analyzer, I've already got one on there. A kick drum should probably be more like that, as opposed to like that, because you've got all these other, hats and stuff playing on top. So yeah, what I would have done with the multi-band dynamics there was actually just to put some compression on just the high end to make it sound a little bit more muffled, a bit more rounded. Yeah, that's a good point actually, is something Boomjinx put me onto was actually having quite a muffled kind of kick. I'll actually just play you quickly the track that he and I did together, because it's a good example of that. He's got like this, do I have it on my computer? Yes, I do. He's got this really muffled sounding kicks, because he kept saying to me, "Oh, your kicks are trying too hard. Your kicks are like always trying to take so much of the groove just by themselves." And so the way he actually does it is to have the hats doing all the kind of, and the claps and things doing all the high end, and having the kick being actually quite muffled. So yeah, so that was the sort of reasoning behind that. I mean, to be honest, I would most of the time stay away from multi-band compression on like an individual element like the kick, because there's just too much margin for error. There's too much propensity for it to just screw the sound of it up altogether. But yeah, once again, I would say if you've got a really, really good kick, you shouldn't have to do that much to it. Maybe some wide band EQ to get it to sit in the right frequency range and stuff like that. But if you're having to do too much surgery to your kick, then it's exactly.
I was wondering what else you do. Whoa. Okay. I was wondering what else you do to get a heavy bass kick as well as a heavy bass line without them kind of interfering with each other, aside from side chaining the bass to the kick.
Well, yeah, I would actually say that the main thing I do is side chaining, but secondary to that is have a bass pattern that never actually hits on the same click as the kick. So I'll show you an example of what I mean there, actually, just quickly. Say you've got this kick going. And say I'm using this. Here, what I could do there, I could probably have that sound the same without it interfering with the kick so much by taking that emphasis off where the kick is. So yeah, basically just putting the notes just basically between the beats, and that goes for a lot of other things as well, and also, yeah, just if you've got like a bass instrument and a kick instrument working well together, if you sidechain the rest of the stuff in your project, like the effects and stuff like that, at least to a certain extent, then it just creates that space. It means that the bass isn't really, or say for example, the kick isn't competing with much in the mix. If your mix overall, if the kick isn't cutting through loud enough, I would say the best thing to do is to get some of the other elements to jump out of the way of it with side chaining, or alternatively, if I wanted to bring that bass line out a bit more, I would layer it with a more upper mid-range sound, so that the overall bass sound is actually not so much in the bass frequencies anymore. Like that bass stem is using the higher frequencies a lot more as well for its kind of clarity, and then doesn't need to take so much of the bass spectrum, basically.
Do you ever combine it? Do you put the bass exactly on the note of the kick to combine the basses, make it a stronger bass?
Yeah, for sure. It just depends on the project. A good example of that is like Daft Punk Around the World, I think, that kind of thing. So it just depends on the effect that you want, basically.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming out today.
Cool. Thanks for coming, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. So, all right.